Hi. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
It's like I've forgotten how to say hello. Hi, everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Life with CACA. I'm your host and fellow producer, as always, Carolina Groppa. Hey, if it's your first time checking out the show, welcome. This is a place where I have candid conversations with producers from all corners of the entertainment industry. My goal with the show really is to talk about the messy parts of life as it pertains to producing. So however you found the show, welcome. Please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts if you don't already. And if you're a regular listener of the show, welcome back. I'm so glad you're here, tuning in week after week, doing this life thing with me. It's so awesome. Sometimes I record these interviews months in advance because the people I have on the show are extremely busy, so I kind of get them when I can get them. Case in point, Cory's interview was recorded in August, hence the very tan photo that you'll see of me with her for this week's cover art. As I grow the show, as you grow with me, I'd love to hear what you think. Sometimes it does feel like I'm speaking into a void. And so if you're listening, if you're enjoying the show, if there's something you want more of, less of, hit me up. Let me know. I really would love to make this a dialogue with you guys. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm here for. What's working? What do you want more of, less of? What's inspiring you? What's motivating you? How can I be a better conduit for these conversations? Hit me up. Let me know. And let's get on with this week's episode. I'm so excited about this guest. Cory Bennett Lewis is the head of production at Bad Robot, J.J. Abrams' production company. We actually met at a general about 2 years ago, and I was really taken with her. She's got this very soft, quiet demeanor, which isn't a standard sort of personality trait of someone who has come up on the physical producer side of things. So whenever I meet someone who is wired very calmly, I'm always curious and I want to know, what is your secret? And so I was so grateful that Cory agreed to sit down and talk with me and let me poke around a little bit more and record it and share it with you guys. So this week, Cory dives deep into the transition from being a freelancer to going in-house at Bad Robot. She talks about meeting JJ for the first time and the 2 films she made there that had the biggest impact on her life. We also discuss what Force Awakens taught her about her marriage, what being a woman in the sci-fi space is like, and the importance of tact. So get ready, grab your coffee, grab your tea. If you're driving, please be safe. Let's hear from Cory. So we're here with you in what will eventually become my podcast studio.
Yeah.
Here at what is it called? The Sugar
Shack.
The Sugar Shack at
Yeah.
Bad Robot. It's very, very nice. So you and I have actually known each other, for a year now? A little more than a year.
Probably a little more than a year.
Yeah, we grabbed coffee.
Yeah.
It was like March, April of last year.
Yeah.
Miss Virginia.
Yep. It was a random person reached out and I said, sure.
Who was a random person?
You were.
I was?
Yeah. We met in a general and then you reached out separately and were like, hey, it was a good general. Can we get coffee? And I was like,
I did. But because Matt Ferrante was like,
Yes.
you should know the ladies over at Bad Robot.
yes, that's
So,
right.
Not
That's
a
right.
total rando. I didn't stalk
But
you.
it was like, you kind of were like, hey, you want to get coffee? And I was like, okay.
How do you feel about that? Like people who are very, I don't want to say aggressive, but sort of have that follow through and they want to take things to the next level. You have to be very tactful about it. So tell me a little bit about your experience.
It's a good question. I think I appreciate people that, put in a little hustle. But I think you're right. There's a way to approach people, and I think there was something about you that was very calming and just
interesting.
It didn't feel like maybe you were trying to get a job. It was like, hey, I'm just trying to get to know people.
Yeah.
And I think I appreciate that, just sitting down and having conversation where you're not like, what is this person really trying to get?
Yeah.
So,
I mean, if someone is more clear with their intention, even if it is like, I'm just trying to get a job, does you feel better knowing the intention, or are you still like, ugh, okay?
Probably depends, if I'm looking to hire, then be straightforward with me.
Right.
But I also think it's important to just be meeting as many people as you can and hearing people's story, because what we're in the business to do, is tell story.
Well, I heard your story and I remembered your story at that coffee date.
I'm going to try to remember the story.
And now I want you to remember verbatim every single thing you said to share with our listeners. No, I remember really feeling similarly about you, in that, you know, you work at a very fancy company and it's a very visible company with what, you know, JJ has created. And that even from when I came for the general, just the sense of like, which sounds silly to say, but like, oh, it's just a bunch of like normal people and like good humans behind the scenes that we never see, just like showing up and doing their best and putting their best foot forward. And I know that sounds silly, but every time I get a nod from the universe that like, hey, this is an industry with a lot of good people and some really shitty ones that sometimes get the press, I like really respond to that. I really, gravitate towards those people, because like you said, I want to know those people. I want to know their stories. I want to see what I can learn and what mistakes I can sort of also learn from through osmosis, you know? I think it's important, especially with production and producing. I think there's not a lot of mentorship and community to talk about a lot of the stuff that we sometimes go through. Yeah.
Well, thank you. I do feel like I'm a very nice person.
You are.
And normal. So how did I start? Is that what you want me to get into?
Like, you can tell us your story.
Yeah.
How did you get here to this couch? And
this couch, man. So, you know, I started out freelancing. I started out as a set PA.
Where are you from?
Oh, I'm from Ventura, California.
Okay.
About an hour north. True Southern California girl. You know, I was out of college looking to figure out what I wanted to do as my career. I don't think I necessarily was thinking I'm gonna go to Hollywood, but had done this internship on an independent feature on the East Coast. I met a lot of great people, and it was, you know, I was a set PA, and I loved we're doing something different every day, and we're outside, and we're moving and shaking. It's, you know, it was cool. It was like nothing I had really done as a job before, or knew that wasn't even a job. So that was kind of my first introduction into like production.
Yeah. Deep end.
The deep end. And a lot of the friends that I had made on that show were, because it was East Coast, we were in Connecticut, they were going back to New York. They were all New York based. You know, as it happens in the industry, like if you work hard, like you will get another job because people will bring you along. And I remember they were all heading back saying, move to New York, we will put you on something immediately. You will go right to work. And I remember being at this moment of like, if I do this, I know I'm not going to go back to college and I won't graduate.
How old were you at that point?
I was probably 20. So I was close to graduating. I remember going, okay, am I moving to New York right now? Or am I going to go back to school and finish my final semester? At that point, I remember thinking, if I don't graduate from college, my mom could possibly murder me. And, you know, so I evaluated what was important to me. And so I told them, I said, I have to go finish school. So I'm going to go back and graduate. But I will reach out to every single one of you when I finish, because I want to pursue this. This is rad, and I know that I can do it well. Yeah. When I graduated, some of the people that I had worked with had come to the West Coast to work on Mission Impossible 3. I started reaching out, and they were like instantly connecting me with people, and I just started set PAing, and somebody said, you would work really well with an AD by the name of Tommy Harper. And I was like, okay, who's Tommy Harper? I remember finishing that job, and he called me. I wasn't expecting his call. And I remember he called me and started interviewing me over the phone, and I was like, who is this guy? Like I had no idea I was having an interview, but basically he was setting up a movie and said, do you want to come work with me? And I was like, okay. So I drove down the next day and had like a proper interview with him, and he hired me on the spot.
To do what?
So he was going to be the first AD, and I was going to be a set PA, but how he operates is, you know, he gives all of his staff a lot to manage and oversee. So I was going to be in prep with him and work on the schedule and probably manage the cast. And then as we got into shooting, I'd eventually probably do call sheets and production reports with him, etc. It was this whole grand plan that he pitched to me, and I was like, great, I'm in. And so we worked, I think, 4 days together, and then the movie got shut down.
Oh, man.
Which happens. And so I was like, hey, it was nice meeting you. Like, hope we can work together again. And off I went. He was freelancing doing, different commercials, and we did some reshoots on like different projects. So I was kind of day playing. And at the time I was bartending because I wasn't working as consistently enough to really like pay the bills.
Well, and that PA money is
PA money
is rough.
It's rough. So yeah, you go bartend 2 nights and you make what you make PAing, but that's the name of the game. And then it was when he got the first Star Trek, which the 2009, and that was my first like full length feature with him. But also like I wasn't day play, like I was on the team, and we worked in LA for maybe 6 months.
Wow.
And then what was unique about that situation was he was an AD and then was going to jump over and production manage second unit, and had said, if you want, like, I've never done this before, I'll need someone helping me. Do you want to come help me run second unit? And I was like, okay. And I think probably at the time before that offer, I was thinking, I'll do the set PA, I'll get my days, I'll get into the DGA, I'll be an AD, and that seemed like a path. And it wasn't until he kind of made that offer of, do you want to help production manage and help me like do the budgets and schedule? And it was just a different perspective of filmmaking that I didn't know, and really so new that I was like, okay, yeah, I'll go with you. And that was the start. We worked together straight, like movie to movie to movie. Man, I had to have been like 8 or 9 years. And what was special about it is he learned because he was learning, I was learning with him. So as he made jumps on next projects, I got to make jumps with him. And ultimately he was, our last freelancing project was Force Awakens, and he was line producing and I was supervising. And that put us in London. I was in London for, I think it was 2 years. And I remember coming back to LA wrapping, and then that's when the conversations about coming in-house here about Robot started. And I think shortly after, we both came in-house.
And then he left.
And then he left. And then he left.
He left the house.
He worked here for 2 years and then ultimately went back freelance. And then that was when, JJ and Katie gave me the opportunity to oversee production, which was a huge opportunity for me, and I took it, and it's been great ever since.
And so that was how many years ago now? So you're head of production.
Head of production.
And tell us a little bit about what that means globally, but specifically to your day-to-day. It's
evolving here at Bad Robot. I think, when Tommy and I came in-house, we were definitely, they hadn't had a production presence maybe with the experience that we had. Really, I think my day-to-day now with the production experience that I have is, obviously we have film and television, and our team there is like, doing the creative and the writers and the directors and the story. And I have, joined the team in evaluating what they're doing from very much a below the line production evaluation, looking at how are we going to do this? Who's going to help us do this? Where are we going to do this? How much is it going to cost? Interfacing with, our studio partners, just getting our shows off the ground and, to the races. It's taken probably, I've been a Bad Robot, I think 4.5 years now, and it's taken that time to like rhythm with the team, and like I think they see the value that I bring, and we're very much like a close unit. Like, we're not segmented where they call downstairs and say, okay, we have a script ready to go. shoot, like, and then never talk again. Like, we're very much a team together and interacting together, and we're talking every second. And we have, and, a head of business affairs now, and like our team's growing, and we're becoming this cool unit that, from a producer standpoint, are watching and overseeing our projects from the very, very beginning to the very, very end. And I think that makes us unique and different maybe from other companies. And, it's a cool process. And I think the more we do it together and the more interaction we have, we start to realize like this is how it should be done.
Yeah. From the moment you started, it seems like you were always working on pretty visible properties, right? Like you were on these big movies, big studio movies with massive budgets.
Yeah.
And then now you're in-house, still pretty much working in a similar space with Star Wars and Star Trek and all of that. But how did the job itself differ for you when you went from just being freelance in the supervising all of that, and now being on the other side of that, where you're overseeing essentially who you used to be?
Yeah.
Right? Like, how does that shift it for you?
It definitely, like, it took a minute to, like, you have to kind of trick your brain, because you're so used to, when you're freelance, you're on one project and you're living and breathing the details of that project, right? You come in house, and then all of a sudden you have 6 shows, 2 features, like
big features, big shows,
big projects. Yeah. It's not possible to live and breathe the details when I was freelance, when I'm in-house. So, it becomes, key hires. Like, I rely heavily on my line producer. Just like, I put a lot of trust in them and I talk to them all the time, but I'm not going to micromanage them. It's not my place to tell them how to do their job, but like, it is a conversation, and it's like, I have to trust that they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So it's not micromanaging. And same when we bring on our post supervisors or our post producers, it's, it's putting the team in place that is going to be on the ground running the show for you.
Yeah.
And then you're doing that in all your different areas of where you have your shows.
Yeah. So how would you define then a capital P producer? That's the first question, I guess. And then where the similarities or differences are from then now being a head of production. Because oftentimes, and this question is coming from a place of, when you have a production company on a project and you look at the credits at the end of a movie or a show, it's like everybody at that production company pretty much is getting some type of producer or EP credit. So for the listeners, and part of this like education of how it all is intertwined behind the scenes, how would you define those roles differently? The sort of producer, capital P producer, and then what you are now?
Yeah. The interesting question. I think, obviously there's the very like specific, line producer, right? And they're that person that is living and breathing and building the budget, the schedule, like that's pretty defined. I think when you come in-house at a company like this and you say, okay, where's my impact as a producer? I think where I feel like I add the most value is making sure the right people are talking. Like, producing is ultimately communication, right? I'm not here to do the details of what, all these super talented people are doing, but I'm here to make sure that all the right people come to the table to deliver what we need to deliver. That's where I feel like the biggest probably impact that I try and have is without it sounding cliche, but like setting the best table possible and all the right people from crew to cast to all the different entities that need to be involved are there communicating on how we're going to achieve.
So then where do you think that so many projects have the best of intentions and then you think you have the right people at the table, but then it gets derailed? Like, this is such a big question. It's not specific to anything, but I'm just generally curious if you have a theory perhaps on like what it is about these projects that are highly visible and have all the elements on paper to be successful, and then they're not. Is there a way when you look back on those projects to be like, oh, this is the point where things went wrong?
You know, that is a big question.
Take your time.
Yeah. I think here's what I would advise people to do. I think it's important in life to reflect and look back and say, did I do the best that I could, or was that, what can I learn from that experience? So I don't know if I could, pinpoint and be like, here's exactly where we went wrong, because who knows? Like, you're making a decision, and when you're producing, sometimes you're making a decision on the fly, and is it always the right decision? Probably not. But I think as producers, sometimes you have to, in order to keep things moving and at the pace that we operate, sometimes not having an answer or making a decision can really slow it down. So, I'm a big believer in, when you wrap a show or a show comes out and you just kind of reflect on, did that work the best way that it could have? I think it's also what's great about this industry, and I think it's why people are drawn to it, is like every project that we do is always different. At least that's what I love about it. And I think if every project was the same, I'd probably get bored pretty quickly. Yeah. So, and it's problem solving, and it's figuring out how to do things that probably a lot of people haven't done before. And that's, I think, what is really great about what we do is just problem solve and try and just figure it out. Yeah. Is it always right? Sure, sometimes. But, I think you take what you've learned from your past project and you try and implement it into your next project. Right. But you don't want to get bogged down on, the mistakes of the past. You kind of have to keep going forward. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it's important to just take into consideration that, you can only do the best with what you have at that moment in time. Right. And 6 months later is a different moment in time. It's like the hindsight is always going to be stronger than in the moment. So it's like, to your point, as someone who does work for this moment on the other side, where I do come in as a line producer, it's like to empower someone to have the sort of autonomy to make those decisions and trust that you're hiring the people with the right instincts that are going to problem solve the way that you probably would too. Exactly. Or some other brilliant way that you never would think of, but that you're bringing the best people to the table, like you were saying, to solve the problems that you don't have the time to think about. Right. Because you're like on the macro and you're paying them to be thinking about the micro.
The micro. Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
I did want to ask you, just out of curiosity, when you remember your first time meeting JJ before you came in-house?
Do I remember? I mean, it would have been Star Trek 2009. And I'm pretty sure it was, in prep, it was either in the production office, and it was probably just a hello, nice to meet you, and he's very gracious that way, and will take time to introduce and say hello to everybody. So it was either there or on set when we were doing camera set tests. Yeah. Probably the same atmosphere, just hello, hi, nice to meet you. Yeah. In the way that we all do. I mean, he and all of our crew are, a great crew. I mean, super polite. I think that's one thing I've been really blessed with, is while working maybe on some of these really big, expensive projects, they're all really, really great, professional, friendly, polite people. Yeah. So that's a great, like, to set the tone or set the table when you're starting your career. Like, That's huge.
Huge. I mean, you feel it. You feel that vibe. I think I told you that the first time I was here, when you're here in this office, that we all know it comes from the top down, you know? And so you attract and it speaks volumes to the kinds of people that him and Katie must be. Yeah. Based on the people that they surround themselves with. And I think that's wonderful.
And look, this can be a crazy industry. And, you know, I think like you said, there can maybe be some not so great people, but I do believe that there's actually a lot of really great people out there. And I think that's worth fighting for. Yeah. And I think, you know, I have said this to some of our interns that, you know, don't ever accept, you know, being mistreated. Like, there's really great people out there, and they're also really talented, and just fight to find those people and work as hard as you can for them.
Yeah, I think it takes time to go through the muck of the people and find the right people. Right. And sometimes some people get stuck in those outer rungs of the kinds of people that are not the best. Yeah. And that breeds you know, and so you create more of that sort of disease, if you will, of people who are broken or hurt or whatever they're up against in their lives that causes them to operate from a place of fear. Because that's what I think it is, you know. Totally. And I always say this, that I don't think who you are in your personal private life is mutually exclusive from who you are in your professional life, not in this business. Yeah. I think that's important.
I think too, sometimes you notice, you know, people can maybe misbehave or not be so kind out of fear. I think you're right. And or because maybe they're really insecure and are afraid to admit that maybe they don't know how to do something. Right. And I think that, you know, as a producer is important that, you know, look, we're not going to know how to do everything, you know, and if you're a director that's coming in and you don't know visual effects or you don't, like, that's okay. Like, we will build the team and the support around that to make sure that you can deliver what you want. I think it's really okay for all of us. I think one of the reasons, you know, I had the support that I had to grow and take the steps in my career is I feel like I was super open and honest about what I did know and what I didn't know. And I didn't hide away from not knowing something. I was like, you know, hello, whatever crew member, let's do your deal, but can you tell me what all this equipment is? Because I really actually don't know it. You know, and I think I found that people appreciated that and they were more honest with me and they'd have a conversation. And, you know, as when you're managing budgets or schedules and they're a part of it with you, I think that really helped in my learning and growing and, you know, accelerating, because the crew was with me. Yeah. And I don't think that they felt like I was some big bad boss coming in to tell them no all the time. Right. Like, and look, you're going to have to, you know, sometimes have hard conversations, and we're not always going to have all the money, but it's always a conversation.
Back to this earlier point of tact. I think everything in life is all about how you deliver the information, right, and the way you choose to communicate whatever it is that you have to say. Yep. And that having the tact and the finesse for knowing what to lean into and what is going to give you the most effective result. That is, I think, the finesse of a producer. Right. The non-hard skills that you can't really learn. It just comes with life experience and understanding human emotion and understanding the psychology of people, right? Yep. And how to talk to different people. So,
communication. It's
communication. Key. It's all the things. That's your podcast theme is communication.
Communication.
But so in that vein, I'm curious, how do you and how does the team here find the stamina to have so many of these massive, huge projects going on at the same time?
Oh man. I think, well, one, I think we're, we're proud and passionate about the projects that we're doing. So I think that helps, because we're excited to be telling those stories. You know, look, it's busy. It's a lot. I think that's what this industry is. And, you know, us saying we're so busy is, you know, everybody's saying that right now. Right. There's a lot of content being made. But I think fundamentally, the way we get through it is we rely on each other, we trust each other, we communicate with each other. And then we also, implement that with, our crews that we have working for us, or our studio partners, or the network, or all the people that are involved. We put some trust in them, and they put some trust in us, and we're not trying to do everything. We're doing what we know how to do, and we expect the people that are going to be making projects with us to do the same.
Yeah.
And that's the case usually.
Good.
Thank you.
So of all the projects that you have been a part of, which one are you most proud of?
That's like a hard question. I think it's hard to like pick one and say what you're the most proud of, but I think with every project I've learned something, whether it's something about myself or about the world. I think the first movie that pops to my head right now is probably Mission Impossible 4. I mean, that was massive. I was getting dropped into countries I had never been to before to like set up the infrastructure, and it was really intense. It was really great, but I remember, man, I was like a rock star flying all over the world and, going like, where am I? Like, what time is it?
Yeah.
We pulled off some really great logistical, stunts of, Tom being outside the Burj Khalifa, and we shot the Kremlin in Russia, and, God, it was so long ago, the fact that I remember all of this. And that was my first, like, big international project where I was just all over the place.
Yeah.
I was in India for a little bit, and that is amazing place, but intense to shoot.
Yeah.
And we were doing car chases, and it was in the middle of the night, and
all the things,
all the things you hear, like it all happened on that project. So I think that I'm just proud of like just that I did it,
that you pulled it off,
that I made it,
you survived.
Yeah. And then I think obviously Force Awakens was its own thing that was really exciting to be a part of, and yes, it was massive and hard work, but I think it was really fun to be a part of, kind of like the kickoff to what this whole world was and is. And living in London was great experience. So I think those are probably like the two, like, probably had the biggest impact on my life.
Yeah.
But they all do. I think I walk away from every project going, wow, there were moments where I didn't know if we were going to pull this off, and then we do. And when you're in it and you're like, this is so hard, you quickly get to the end and go, it wasn't so bad, I'll do it again.
Yeah. Well, in those moments where you're like, this is so hard, or how are we going to pull this off, what is it that personally keeps you going?
Personally, like what do I do in my spare time? Or like,
if not so much now that you're in-house, but when you were freelancing and you're having those 16-hour days where you're in India and you don't have the comfort of things that make you happy at the end of the day, and you're just like, okay, we have another 47 days of this, like, what is the thing that for you just keeps you motivated?
I think fundamentally great people. I think if I didn't like the people I was working with, I would have been like, I'm out. Like, this is not worth it to me. So, I said it before, like, I've been super blessed to work on these projects with people that are just good people and, want to be as helpful as possible. And, like, they're just nice people to hang out with. So it's, like, I think when you're on the road or wherever you are, and especially with the hours that we put in, you can sometimes lose touch of what's going on in the real world.
Yeah.
And, these people, in essence, kind of become your family because you're with them for so long. So I think that is why I was able to do it and do it for as long as I did, and probably back to back to back. You know, the one lesson I learned quickly was, was between like my husband and I, and how we were going to navigate this industry, because I'm on the road so much. At a certain point, I remember he was like, I know it's fun and all, but we are married, and, I'd like to see you occasionally. And
is he in the business?
He's not in the business. He's a photographer, so it's kind of similar, but he wasn't traveling in the ways that I was. And I remember before I did Star Wars, I did a movie for Paramount called Jack Ryan, and I was in London prior to Force Awakens. I remember coming home after wrapping that, and that's when he was like, okay, what's next? And at the time, I didn't know. I think I was like, Star Wars could be the next thing. It means I'd go back to London for, at that time, it was probably like another 6 months. And that's when he was like, okay, we're going to have the honest conversation. And I'm glad that he did, because he was like, as you know, you can get sucked into that world, and you're just like living it every day, and you're go, go, go. And like everything outside that world can kind of disappear.
Yeah.
I remember kind of being rocked a little bit of like, oh, hold on. Like, let's take a step back. Because now you have to remember, too, I was working like back to back to back. Yeah. So I was like wrapping a show on a Friday and starting a new one on a Monday.
Crazy person.
I know.
Oh my God.
And I think I did that for like 5 years straight. So when he like put the pause on me and said, how are we going to do this? Because if you keep doing it the way you're doing it, like, I ain't staying around. And I was like, oh, okay.
Burn.
So ultimately what we figured out is, when 7 happened, we decided like, okay, you're going to come with me. We're going to try this. We're going to, you're going to leave your job. At the time we didn't have a house, so we put all of our stuff in storage. And yeah, we moved to London, and we like settled there, and it was so great, to the point where I'm like, how did I like do all these projects without you? Like, there was just such a nice rhythm to like be working so hard and the hours you have, but then you come home and like, oh, your family's here. That was a moment where I was like, okay, work-life balance, that has meaning to me. Like, I now get like why this is important. I think that was like the start of us being like, okay, we've figured out how we're going to do this. And I think especially being a female and me working and him not working, like we were navigating like what that meant.
That dynamic. Yeah.
That dynamic and what people maybe thought of it. I think that was a moment where in our relationship, I really understood and like held firm to like, this is a partnership, and every partnership has to do what works for both of them, and this is what works for us.
Yeah.
And if people have an issue with it,
that's their problem.
Screw them. Right. And like, it was a really like I'm really like proud that we went through that, because I think it made our relationship stronger of like, no, actually you can have your opinion, but this is how we do it. And I think if I hadn't come in-house and was freelance, like we would have just figured out that rhythm. We left that project going, this is how we are going to live life.
So do you think that before that experience, did you just not have maybe the awareness or the value towards that work-life balance since you were going so hard for 5 years? Or were you just like a workaholic and just so immersed because the opportunities were coming and feeling like, oh, I just want to have more to my life than just my professional identity?
Right. I think probably yes to all of that. I think there was probably a level of workaholic, yes, just wanting to go. I think one, when you work the hours that we do, and like you have to kind of condition yourself to it. It's not normal.
Yeah.
And I liked it. So like it kept me engaged, and so I thrived off of that. There was also probably a bit of like, I need to keep going, because if I take a break, like I don't want to have a setback. I want to I want to keep accelerating. I want to keep climbing the ladder or, taking the next step. And I was, truth be told, probably a little nervous that if I didn't take a job, was that going to just set me back?
Yeah.
And looking back, reflecting now, I would have been fine. But I think I've just matured. And, I think the big draw of like coming in house and maybe not being on the road, like I've grown up in like what is important and knowing like, look, if I don't take a job right away, like everything's going to be okay. Like,
yeah,
I'm never going to work again. I'll figure it out.
Do you feel that your professional identity defines who you are?
I don't think it does anymore. I think when I was in the freelance world and working back to back and all over the world, that probably was a big part of my identity. Like I'd come back and see family or friends and they'd always be like, oh, where are you these days? Like what crazy country are you in? Like, so I was very like by my peers and family known of like, that's what she does. I think
the gypsy.
Yeah. I think now I probably value the work-life balance more. Like, I don't identify myself of just this industry.
So what's the other side of Cory like? What does she do?
I can't tell you.
When she's not being a badass.
Yeah. Look, I think it's spending time with, family, friends, taking time for yourself to be out in the world, experiencing the world. I think, and I think we've talked about this in the past of like, you can go into that black hole on a project and like come out and be like, wait, what's happening in the world?
Yeah. It's kind of terrifying.
It is.
How all consuming it is, especially when you are the person running a production and
exactly.
you are so focus on the micro, like we were saying, like it requires that much of you.
Yeah.
It's like you blink and 6 months have passed and you haven't bought toilet paper.
Yeah.
You have missed birthdays. You've gained weight.
Friends have kids. You're like, what?
What happened? Like, it's wild.
Yeah.
And I find it a little terrifying, honestly, because sometimes I feel like, am I blinking and 6 months of my life has passed and I haven't felt it, And yes, you're gaining all of this amazing stuff on like the professional side.
Yeah.
But what are you missing, right? Like there's always that opportunity cost. What are the moments with your family that you don't get to be there for?
Exactly.
What are the other parts of your life that you're not present for?
Yeah.
Because you physically can't. You don't have that bandwidth.
Yeah.
And I think as I get older too, it's that the prioritizing of what I want my life to be as a person who still wants to be in this career path and loves what I do, but I don't want this to be all I have.
Exactly.
And all I am and all that's my legacy is just like, well, she worked herself to the ground.
Right.
And always came in under budget. It's like, I want more to my life than that, And I think to your point, it takes that maturity when you go hard for so long. Cause I feel like a kinship to everything you're saying in my 20s and just going so hard because I didn't have a set track like sort of like you did. I just had to hustle and climb my way through the trenches into the opportunities to get to the place that I am today. And it's not lost on me, but I just feel tired and I want to like nap.
Yeah. I know. Napping is so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think it's, I think that's probably maturity.
Adulting,
true adulting. But it's valuing the people that are in your life. So, the family, the friends, but then also I think valuing the people that you work with. Going back to what we were talking about earlier, like life is too short to work with people that aren't nice. And I just really think that's worth fighting for. If it means not taking a job because it's with people that aren't good people, then don't take the job.
Yeah.
They're out there and you'll find them.
Yeah.
And then you'll want to work really hard for them. And they'll work really hard for you.
Yeah. I love it. This may be a silly question, but is there anything to be said about what's it like to be a woman working in the sci-fi space, or is that a non-applicable conversation topic?
I feel like it's probably changing. I feel comfortable in the sci-fi space because it's, what I was trained on. I think there are probably a lot of women that want to be in the sci-fi space and are fighting to get into it. all women in general are like, we're fighting to get into all the spaces. So I think, yes, it's a worthy conversation to have. And I think it's important to, as producers, like we said, when we are setting that table, when we look around that table, are we well represented?
Yeah.
Is everyone well represented? And if there's not, are we asking the questions of why not and who else is out there? Let's dig a little deeper.
I mean, do you feel like with everything that's been happening more publicly the past few years with women in our business, but women as a whole, have you seen those shifts internally for you in the rooms that you're in?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's definitely a conversation more so, and I think that's important. I think, yes, it's a moment. I don't really like to use that term because I don't want it to be a moment. I want it to just be how it is. I think I have a responsibility as a person in a leadership position and as a producer to make sure those conversations are being had at every level, in front of the camera to behind the camera to interns to PAs to HODs, that those conversations are happening. I think more and more they are, but I'm more than happy to make sure that they continue to happen.
Yeah. What are some misconceptions you think people have about producers and then of a person who is in-house?
Misconceptions. Probably, we don't always say no. I think producers are generally, or at least I feel, reasonable people, which is why I think conversation is important. Like talking it out is important. Asking questions is important on both sides, on the producer side and on your crew side. That's probably what I would say.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if there was, I hear a lot of the misconceptions with some of the people I've interviewed that are generally from like the crew perspective of what people perceive a producer to be or not to be, or the line producer. But I was curious if, since you deal so much with studios and this bigger worlds that I'm not privy to, if you also felt like there were misconceptions that even people at the top have because they don't understand.
Yeah, sure. I think in any forum, there will always be those people that question what you're doing. My response to people, like, I try not to have an ego. I'll prove myself, just by getting the job done, and I don't need to scream and shout and have you, respect me because I'm a producer. I mean, of course I want to be respected, but I want to be respected because I know what I'm talking about, or I'm leading the best way possible.
Yeah.
But sure, I definitely have been challenged by crews or at the studio level with kind of that tone of like, do you know what you're doing? Do you have the experience?
I do know that tone.
Yeah.
Very well.
And that's like, I'm not the person to scream and yell or whatnot, but I speak as much truth as I can and answer the questions.
So have you ever been impacted by the infamous imposter syndrome that everybody talks about?
Like, have people accuse me of imposter syndrome?
Have you felt it? I'm always curious in what it is that keeps people going when they're in those moments, just because of my own process, really. It's more of like a selfish question. So I just love learning how in those moments where things aren't all peachy, how do you get to that other side?
Sure. I think as most people, there's always those moments where like internally you're going, can I do this? I think I can do it, but what if I can't do it? Like, and you start questioning and maybe your confidence starts to fall a little bit. I think when I have those moments, I think, one, I try and be as positive as possible. Two, deep breathing is a great mechanism. And then I think it's honesty. Like, I just really fall back to that of like, it's okay to be nervous. It's okay to be scared. It's okay to not know everything. It's better to like own that than to like walk into a room and like pretend like you know what you're doing. I get more respect from people when I'm just as honest as possible, going, oh, I've never done that. How do we do that? What do you think? Like, and get people in the conversation with you. kind of gets me through that moment of like going, it's okay that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be okay with that.
I love that.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you nailed it. I think that's the right answer. Not that there is one, but that's what I thought you'd say.
Good. Thank you.
There's a lot of changes happening here at Bad Robot. We may have seen in the media that Warner Media is going to be the new partner going forward. So I'm curious, in this new chapter that you guys are about to enter, just what you're most excited about.
Let's see. I think the industry right now, with the amount of storytelling that's being told, it's a lot. And that's exciting. And I think it's exciting to be at a place that gets to participate in that and, you know, tell great stories and get them out to the world on whatever platform that makes sense. I think personally for me and, you know, my department, I'm excited to grow a little bit to help support the projects that we're making in, I think, what is a really unique way of having this team that can really be a place for, you know, whether it's showrunners or writers or directors, come to Bad Robot to figure it out, to explore, to test or try and have it be that safe space that helps them tell the best story they can and be that SWAT team or that kind of cool toolbox that they can enter and actually create things.
Yeah.
So in the one log line, I guess that's what I'm excited about, because I think that is a unique perspective and how you approach storytelling. And what I really love is being there from the get-go to, I guess, just really be the safe space. It's like, try, and if you mess up or if it doesn't work, it's okay. Your secrets are safe with us, per se.
Yeah.
As it gets figured out and stories are ready to go out into the world, to be a part of that is exciting, and knowing that we helped facilitate that.
Would you say then that's what you love most about producing in your job?
100%. Yeah, for sure. I think I love the problem solving. I love, like I said before, I love that every project's different. Even if you're telling the same story in a different, you know, time or whatever, like how you approach that is always going to be different. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what makes it fun.
Yeah.
For me.
What about any cons? Is there anything that you're like, this comes with the territory, you just got to handle it?
Yeah, I mean, such is life, right? Like, there's going to be challenging moments. There's going to be moments when you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. But, like, you got to, like, power through and, you know.
Yeah. How do you power through
How do you power through?
Tell me your secret. I want to know.
I don't know if I have, you know, a secret. I think, look, I'm willing to work really hard and I will give it my all. Going back to what we talked about earlier, just like the work-life balance, I really evaluate that. Like, as you know, like you can do this nonstop, but like reminding yourself, like, it's time to go home, like time to, you make sure you get enough sleep, go out to dinner, everyone's like engaged with your loved ones, like have conversations about the world and what's going on in the world. Don't just get sucked into the stories we're telling and only talk about that. I think it's important to, you know, read the newspaper, you know, watch the news, like hear other people's stories, because they're important.
So a lot of dinners, a lot of naps.
A lot of naps. I love naps.
Huge fan of naps. Ladies and germs.
Yeah. Every company should have napping pods.
Oh my God. I would 1,000% agree.
I know.
So on the
take time for yourself.
Okay. Yeah, take time for yourself. So I guess that bleeds into the next question. Okay. I feel like this question gets asked a lot, and I, as a person who has been on the other side of hearing the answer, I always feel somewhat like frustrated, because I feel like you have the answer and you're just not telling me what the answer is, you know? Meaning, like, when we hear somebody at a Q&A or whatever ask, like, well, what advice would you give for someone who wants to be in your shoes or walk a similar path? Everybody's path is different, but someone who's hearing your story and thinks, okay, like, I want to, you know, walk as closely to that line as I think I can. Sure. What advice would you give to them?
I think for me, when I, again, like go back and reflect on like the decisions that I made to get to where I am, I think each time I like took a step in a different direction, I would say be open to walking through a door that just presented itself. When I look back early on, when I was like thinking I was going to go the AD route and Tommy made the random, like, you want to come join me here, like, I think maybe a lot of people might have said no to that because you're going into the office and you're dealing with numbers and, you know, it's math, and why would you leave set when you're like, that's where all the action is? Like, there was something in me that said, I'm going to try this. So I would say that, like, don't be afraid to like walk through that door, even if you don't fully know what it could lead to. But then to kind of counter that, I would also say you got to believe in yourself. If there's something that you want to do, believe you can do it. Visualize that you're going to do it. Think about the future and like where you want to be. Like, make plans like that. Like, I do that all the time of like, okay, what path am I on right now? Like, where do I want to end up? Or, you know, what goals do I want to accomplish? Challenge yourself and then go after it. That would be my advice.
That's really good advice. I mean, it's clearly working out for you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So you should start a visualization
seminar. Deep breathing, visualization.
And naps. Well, this is the end of our time together, at least on mic. On mic. We did it. Yes. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
This means the world to me to sit and talk to you.
It was fun.
And get to hear your story and share it with the world, the people who will listen, and have a little more insight into this crazy world that we live in and work in.
Awesome.
So,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yay.
And that's this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and doing this life thing with me week after week. So nice to know you're out there. If you don't already, please subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts. Give me a 5-star review. Tell a friend, tag a friend, and hit me up. I'd love to hear what you think. I'm at Carolina Groppa. The show's at Life with CACA, and I'll see you next week. Beijos.